Your grace and mercy brought us through. We're living this moment only because of God. If you're living because of God, put your hands together for Almighty God at this time before our minister comes to us. Your grace and mercy brought me through. Brought me through. I'm living this moment because of you. I want to thank you and praise you too, and praise you too. Your grace and mercy brought me through. Brought me through. One more time, sing. Your grace and mercy brought us through. Brought me through. I'm moving this moment. I'm living this moment because of you. I want to thank you. I want to thank you and praise you too. And praise you too. Your grace and mercy brought me through. Brought me through. For your grace and mercies brought me through. Amen.
Go ahead and praise him. Go ahead and praise him. Praise God is worthy to be praised. And indeed, this morning we can indeed declare that his grace and his mercy brought us through. Amen? Amen. Praise God. You may be seated. No, I stand up here all along with the praise team. So one of us stand up here with me. Fair enough? Yes. Amen. So my brothers and sisters, as we come today, we want to pause to recognize the goodness of God towards us. And so as we reflect for the next few minutes, I coin a little theme here, and it says stewardship of growth and development. The scripture read in Colossians 3 and verse 23, and it reads thus: whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters. As we reflect, as school leaders, we are not just administrators. We are cultivators of minds and guardians of the future. Our vision, our decisions, it ripples through classrooms, communities, and generations. That is why school improvement planning isn't just a task. It is a ministry. Can I repeat? School improvement planning isn't just a task. It is a ministry. not the Ministry of Education, Region 6. But let us consider, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, that as we reflect on doing that which God has called us to do, and wherever we are at this moment, whatever the community may be like, whatever the school is, or wherever, we have been called by God to do a ministry. We have been called by God, and it means then that at some point, each and every one of us will have to give an account of that stewardship responsibility, how we carry out that stewardship responsibility assigned to us. And so then I urge us, as we carry out that stewardship responsibility assigned to us, that we take account of our flock. Which means, just as a shepherd monitor the health of their flock, we are called to monitor and nurture our students' outcome. Which means that when we think of performance tracking, we have to ensure that our students, those entrusted in our care, are progressing as they go through the institution. We oftentimes hear the term added value. And so it is important, colleagues, that we ensure that we put the necessary framework in place to ensure that students achieve. Take account of your flock isn't about data alone. It is also about recognizing growth, identifying needs, and stewarding those individuals. I urge us, colleagues, that as we go through and reflect on what we are called to do, that those persons entrust in our care, that we remind each and every one that we must take account. To whom much is given, much is expected. And so we must hold everyone accountable. Let us pray as we look to God for his leading and his direction. Almighty and loving God, we salute and we glorify your name. We give you thanks for your grace and your mercies. Here we are this moment, God. We ask that you will intervene and you will allow each and every one of us that as we come, that we will leave here with that intention and determination to ensure that those entrusted our care will be better individuals. As we meet to plan and discuss, we cast every care into your divine hands right now. And we ask you, divine God, that you will take full control. We ask that whatever, oh God, we fail to ask of thee, fail not to grant it unto us, as we tell you thanks for what you have done, and we tell you thanks for what you will continue to do in and through us and in our schools and our schools community. Guide us now, we pray, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, devotions was led this morning. The praise team by Principal Malika Sinclair Bailey. Let's hear it for her. And Principal Joni McTavish Tucker, the Region 6 praise team. And of course, invocation by Principal Ricardo Ross. Let's thank them by a round of applause. Keynote speaker, Professor Canyon Thompson. Director of Regional Educational Services, Region 6, Mrs. Sophia Forbes Hall. Assistant Chief Education Officer, Dr. Olivine Evans. Senior Education Officers, Mr. Floyd Kelly, Mrs. Fiona Morris Webb, Mrs. Stephanie Webb Parker, Dr. Noglet McLean Francis, and Dr. Lamar Edgehill. Colleague Education Officers, other members of staff of Region 6, principals, vice principals, and senior teachers, good morning. Good morning. We are assembled today as the mighty region that inspires and nurtures greatness, and under the theme, school improvement planning and the trend agenda. Welcome to our Principals Retreat 2025. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, we must make time and take time to recognize the QECs, because every member of a school today is here represented under a QEC. So are you ready? We don't sound ready. Are you ready? Yes. To stand and represent your QEC? Yes. Are you ready to stand and represent your QEC? Yes. And we begin with the first of them all, QEC 53, under the patronage. Wait first. Under the proud patronage of Member of Parliament, Mr. Hugh Graham, convened by Officer Mrs. Christine Dale Shields. The president of this QEC is none other than Principal Mr. Christopher Green of the Orange Field Primary School. Can I hear it for QEC 53? Not a bad start. Let's see if we can get warmer. QEC 54, under the distinguished patronage of Member of Parliament Mr. Edward Warmington, temporarily being convened by Mrs. Karine Reed Clark, and the president is none other than Principal Mr. George Good of the Old Harbour Primary. Let me hear it for QEC 54. Is that better than 53? No. The bus is on its way. We'll do it again when the bus arrives. Remind me. QEC 55, under the patronage of Mr. Fitz Jackson over there in Portmore, convened by Officer Mr. Omar Thomas and the President and Principal, Mr. Roy John Keith of the Belmont Park Primary. Let me hear it for QEC 55. 55 is sound like you have a bus on the way as well. QEC 56. Under the distinguished patronage of Member of Parliament, the Honourable Olivia Grange, the Convener Officer, Miss Lacey Ann Blake, President Mrs. Caroline Collins Dawkins of the Ensign City Primary. Let me hear for QEC 56. And we welcome into our midst the members of Television Jamaica. Welcome. And everybody look sharp. You are going to be on TV, looking in, looking out, looking. Is that TVJ? One of them. Sorry. TVJ, just look at us. I was just pranking you. And we move on, and don't flop me now, to QEC 57. Under the distinguished patronage of Member of Parliament Mr. Robert Miller, convened by yours truly, Marcy Higgins, And the president, Mr. Carlisle Thompson of the South Borough Primary School. Let me hear it for QEC 57. QEC 58. Are you ready? I see Dr. Berg soliciting. And you should not be soliciting, but she does it all the time. Give me a minute, 58. Do you have a bus on the way as well? QEC 58, under the patronage of Member of Parliament, Mrs. Natalie Nita Garvey, convened by the one and only Dr. Euphemia Burke Robinson, the president of this QEC, Principal Harris Francis of the Crescent Primary School. Let me hear it for QEC 58. We move to 59. Under the distinguished patronage of the Honorable Dr. Christopher Tufton, convened by Officer Mrs. Daphne Brown Mundo, the President, Principal Mrs. Sherman Powell of the Point Hill Primary. Let me hear it for QEC 59. 60. QEC 60, under the patronage of Member of Parliament Mrs. Carencia Morrison, convened by Officer Mrs. Stacy Ann White-Tusi, the President, Mr. Alvin Walker of the Mount Hermon Primary and Infant School. Let me hear it for QEC 60. All right, 60, take it down. QEC 61. Under the patronage of Member of Parliament Mrs. Carencia Morrison. 61. Because I don't go on so much, I have to call it twice. 61. Under the patronage of Member of Parliament Mrs. Denise Daly. Do I understand this? Convened by Officer Ms. Lacey Ann Blake, President Dr. Walton Small of the Hyden High School. Let me hear it for QEC 61. QEC 62. Under the distinguished patronage of Member of Parliament Dr. Andrew Wheatley. Convened again by yours truly, Marcy Higgins, the President, none other than Principal Collington Powell of the Innswood High School. Let me hear it for QEC 62. And finally, QEC 63. Under the distinguished patronage of the Honorable Alanda Terrell, convened by Officer Mr. Omar Thomas, President, Principal, and Gabby Spence of the Independent City Primary School. Let's hear it for QEC 63. Has the bus arrived from 54? Eh? Should I give them a second chance? I'm not staying too bad, I must be loving. QEC 54, just to be fair and give them their best shot. Under the patronage of Member of Parliament Mr. Everett Warrington, being overseen at present by CRO Mrs. Karine Reed Clark, the President, Principal Mr. George Good of the Old Harbor Primary. Let's hear it for QEC 54. Look like the bus turned back. Ladies and gentlemen, now that we have represented our QEC to the best of our ability, we turn to an important item on the program. No organization, no unit can be good, can improve, can be great without a great leader. At Region 6, we are blessed to have a leader who is a visionary, who sets high standards and expects nothing less. Put your hands together to bring you the welcome Rationale and State of the Region. A rousing applause for Director Sophia Forbes-Hall. Take it away.
Dr. Olivine Evans, Assistant Chief Education Officer, and Dr. Lamar Edgehill, Senior Education Officer in the Standards Development Unit, School Improvement Services Branch, in the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth and Information. Professor Canute Thompson, Pro Vice Chancellor of the Board of Undergraduate Studies at the University of the West Indies, and our able keynote speaker, Mr. Floyd Kelly, Mrs. Morris Webb, Mrs. Stephanie Webb Parker, and Mrs. Alison Brown Thompson, Senior Education Officers, Region 6, Officers of the Senior Management and Planning Committees, Education Officers and other members of the regional staff, Principals and Vice Principals, ladies and gentlemen, I greet you well. Today, by virtue of our theme, School Improvement Planning and the Trend Agenda, we have signaled a continuation of the scope of work in school improvement planning that is being undertaken by the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth and Information. I am elated to retreat with so many of you today. The experience has so far been overwhelming. It gives me great pleasure to report that in attendance are more than 200 principals and vice principals from 117 of our 129 public schools in Region 6. This accounts for the attendance of over 90% of school leaders at the infant, primary, and secondary levels of the system. School improvement planning. School improvement planning in the ministry as a practice is decades old, with several iterations over the period of implementation. The retreat is planned to actively engage participants in discourse and practice, intended to enable greater awareness of the field of school improvement planning, informed by the findings, of course, of our local context. An informed response to addressing the concerns of the quality of school improvement plans and processes regionally is an imperative. Please allow me, ladies and gentlemen, a few minutes to track the progress of school improvement planning as a priority of the Ministry of Education. The reform of secondary education rose. The Government of Jamaica World Bank reform of secondary education ROSE project was implemented in 1993. The aim of the ROSE project was to strengthen student performance at the lower grades, grades 7 to 9 of the secondary system. A subcomponent of ROSE was the adoption of school improvement planning as a structured approach under the initiative to treat with the management of resources in achieving optimal levels of performance. In advancing this objective, the government of Jamaica Rose's School Improvement Planning Manual was developed, and teachers in 440 schools were trained under the project. The New Horizons for Primary Schools project realized significant improvement in the performance of students in literacy in 72 lowest performing primary schools. The success of the project resulted from the use of school improvement strategies that were used to forge stakeholder partnerships. In this case, the parents of the students affected were integral to the project. The government of Jamaica, USAID SIP manual was developed in 2003 by the National Council on Education, and all teachers and principals in the 72 schools were trained in the SIP approach. Later, the Jamaica All-Age Schools Project, JASP, was established in 2000, where a 3-year period was designed to raise the performance levels of students enrolled in grades 7 to 9 of 48 all-age schools located in rural Jamaica. It was funded by the Government of Jamaica and the Department of International Development. Several activities were implemented under the project, including the adoption of school improvement planning to encourage community and school partnership. Under JASP, more than 200 all-age school principals and teachers were trained in several approaches to school improvement planning. The SIP manuals were developed and distributed in order to supplement this activity. The School Improvement Services branch of the Ministry of Education was established in 2018 to streamline the process of school improvement planning across schools in all 7 regions. Each unit is mandated to guide and support education officers at the regional level to implement with fidelity the school improvement framework approved by the executive arm of the ministry. The 3 units existing in the School Improvement Services branch function to support key areas of school improvement planning using a data-driven protocol. Let's begin with the Standards Development Unit. This unit was developed to ensure the school supervisory framework is represented at the regional level through the clinical approaches adopted by education officers. These approaches are strategies aimed to establish the standards for supervision of public schools to enable improved results specific to the findings of the National Education Inspectorate Key Performance Indicators. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Drs. Olivine Evans and Lamar Edgehill, who are representing the Standards Development Unit. I invite them to stand at this point. Thank you so much. The Program Monitoring and Development Unit is responsible for tracking and reporting trends in performance in relation to students, teachers, school leaders, and all players who impact the system. Its role has been most dominant recently as the unit meets with schools or met with schools to set performance targets in mathematics and English. Thirdly, the Policy Implementation and Quality Assurance Unit has been mandated to ensure that the ministry's policies are operationalized at the regional level and that the quality of implementation of each initiative is applicable, is relevant, and appropriately customized in alignment with the ministry's policy directives. Now, the first edition of the SIP manual testifies to the growth of the field of school improvement planning in Jamaica. This edition represents a collation of the materials and findings under key projects such as those mentioned earlier. Later, the second edition was developed and circulated and is currently being utilized to guide the region's preparation for the next 3 years. September 1, 2025 to August 31, 2028 of its 6th cycle. Each time we engage the process map shown here, we are reminded that the school is fixed at the core of school improvement planning. Your preparation for this retreat entailed the development and submission of your school self-evaluation document to the regional office. The feedback from a diverse group of partners from regional, community-based, and governance levels informed the development of your draft school improvement plans. We have convened this our 3-day and 2-night retreat to allow for introspection of the draft plans and a willingness to discuss and assess the quality of these documents. So we are all at a number 4 today, preparation of the final plan. I guarantee you that you will be inspired to update your drafts over the 3 days while you traverse the 10 fun-filled, compact, productive, and interactive sessions organized for you. You are aware of the July 31, 2025 deadline for submission of your plans, further to the ratification of submission by the boards of management. The data shows that the region's rate of school improvement planning submissions has steadily increased over the years. Regrettably, our review of the processes of implementation of the plans at the school level has fallen short of our expectation. The observation justifies a call for our decisive action and strategies to enable the implementation of the tasks outlined in the SIP operational plans in each school. The development of school improvement plan is not an academic exercise, but serves as the machinery for accountability at the level of the region and the school. This retreat has been carefully planned to support school leaders to develop viable and robust plans, but importantly, to promote a culture of implementation and monitoring among school leaders, education officers, and all officers employed by the ministry whose job functions impact the quality of educational programs offered in public schools. Numbers 7, 8, and 9 on the process map are predicated on this approach. Ladies and gentlemen, please engage with the timelines shared. Congratulations, Region 6, the region that inspires and nurtures greatness. When we first met in April of this year, there was no plan for a retreat, and some of us had no idea that our operational plans would have been this advanced. We're well within the timeline to submit final plans in a few weeks in anticipation of the start of the new cycle in September 2025. This year, the region opted for a school improvement planning retreat as opposed to our annual back-to-school conference as a demonstration of our intent to capitalize on the gains already made and to refocus and rechart our course for greater efficiency and accountability. And so we've established these objectives in keeping with our intentions: to deepen principals and school leaders' understanding of the SIP as a strategic tool for transforming teaching, learning, and overall school performance; to support the integration of the CIA roadmap within the SIP process, ensuring alignment between curriculum goals, instructional strategies, and assessment practices; to promote a mindset shift among principals toward data-informed decision-making, innovative leadership, and responsiveness to evolving educational trends; to provide opportunities for principals to reflect, share best practices, and engage in professional dialogue that fosters stronger planning, execution, and monitoring. Let's balance the SIP. It is important that the school improvement plan is balanced in its representation of the ministry's key policy priorities. The program for this retreat promotes an inclusive response to the services in schools so that students have access and are appropriately supported to achieve. In so doing, the sessions for this event were deliberately scoped to achieve this balance. The SIP operational and the principal's annual action plans represent our commitment to ensure that a variety of educational services are implemented at the school level to create the balance in our school spaces. So, we have extended the scope, and this is what we came up with. Project proposal writing, mathematics in emergency leadership management, behavior change management, the curriculum and assessment roadmap, the early reading initiative, financial management to include cash book, budget development and utilization, as well as procurement procedures, standards for school improvement, supervision of the school improvement process, human resource management. Let's turn our attention to our PEP performance. How could I not acknowledge the improved performance of our primary schools in the sittings of the primary exit program, PEP 4, 5, and 6. I am particularly impressed by the outstanding performance of our small schools. The majority of our primary schools are classified as grade 1 type schools with small enrollment. Data reviews in the past triggered concern for the poor performance of small schools nationally. Today, however, we celebrate the outstanding performance of all our primary schools, particularly those supported under the National School Learning Program. The Old Harbour region, Region 6, accounts for the second highest sitting of PEP 6 2025. With 5,870 students. The number of students sat aligns with the regional and national enrollment data for 2024-2025 for all 4 subject offerings. By examining the percentage column under the beginning category, you will agree that while the region accounts for the 4th lowest in the beginning category overall, with Montego Bay and Kingston having the lowest number of students in this grouping, we intend to reduce those rates even further. We are cognizant that given a number of interventions that are being implemented in our schools, for example, the early reading initiative, our students are expected to do well in future examination sittings. Greater care is being taken to ensure that the affected schools represent appropriate teacher and student related interventions, supervisory support in relation to the principal's action plans and SIP operational plans, as well as ongoing monitoring and coaching support from education officers at the implementation stage of the plans. Let us examine the region's performance in mathematics in relation to the national average for the proficient and highly proficient categories. We're proud to report that 57.3% of our students second to Kingston region performed well in the proficient category and 7.9% in the highly proficient categories in mathematics. Your review of the bar graph shows that second to the Kingston region, Region 6 surpassed the national average of 54.3% in mathematics to record that stunning performance of 57.3% in the proficient category and 5.2% at national to 7.9% in the highly proficient category regionally. Region 1, we are coming for you. So, how have we been performing over a 4-year period in mathematics, commencing in 2022? The trend analysis projected illustrates that for the beginning category over the 4-year period, the number of students have remained significantly low, and we intend to retain this. In fact, the year's results show the lowest number of students in the beginning category. Kudos to Team Primary. Well done. For the developing category, the numbers trended consistently lower with a slight increase this year. There's nothing to be concerned about here. In the case of the proficient category, there was a slight decline this year to 57.3%, and quite the opposite for the highly proficient category, which increased to 7.9%, representing the highest rate of performance over the 4 years. We are indeed trending for a brighter tomorrow. By examining the percentage column under the beginning category, we share that unlike mathematics, where Kingston, Montego Bay, and Port Antonio had the lowest number of students in the beginning category, Old Harbour this time in language arts was ranked the second lowest, accounting for the number of students in the beginning category. The Kingston region led us with 5.7%, while Region 6 was second at 7.9%. In the case of language arts, the analysis is similar to that of mathematics, with the region surpassing the national average at 64.3% for the proficient category to attain 68.3%. The same is true for the highly proficient category, where the national average is 1.4% and the region surpassing that at 2.7%. Let us examine our performance in language arts over a 4-year period. The trend analysis projected illustrates that for the beginning category over the 4-year period, the number of students have remained significantly low, and we intend again to retain this. Regrettably, this year's results, 6.1%, show that the second highest increase over the 4-year period for the beginning category is in language arts. We have identified the schools affected and will in the new school year effect the support required in keeping with the school improvement priorities. For the developing category, there is a general fluctuation but a decrease in the number of students in this category for this year. This is a positive indication. In the case of the proficient level of performance, the rates of performance have fluctuated over the period, with a slight decrease of 62.3% for this year. This is an error that is flagged for further review. We are proud to report that while we would have liked to revert or surpass our top performance of 15% in 2022 in the highly proficient category, we are pleased with the level of increase to 10% this year. While we have remained flat in 2023 at 6.1% and 2024 at 5.5%, the scores were almost doubled in 2025. We are interested in raising the quality of students' performance and depend heavily on the results of the proficient and highly proficient categories to realize satisfaction with the quality of student performance at the regional level. At the end of this retreat, ladies and gentlemen, the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth and Information will deem your plan balanced, inspiring, practical, and measurable, should it include the list shared here, though not exhaustive. Activate registration of infant schools and departments for certification. Improve the readiness of infant schools and departments to achieve certification. Improve the number of students deemed ready to access the Grade 1 curriculum. Establish relationships and networks in alignment with the Ministry's Public-Private Partnership Initiative. Consult with school boards, staff, parents, and community. Implement, monitor, and report on the annual School Improvement Plan, Operational Plan. Analyze performance data for informed planning. Monitor and evaluate intervention programs, for example, the early reading intervention. Implement the curriculum instruction and assessment roadmap with fidelity. Increase the number of grade 11 students sitting 5 or more subjects in exit examinations at secondary. Increase the number of grade 11 students at secondary attaining 5 or more subjects in exit examinations. Improve student performance in CSEC English and mathematics. Improve students' performance in literacy and numeracy in tandem with the established MOE&I targets for mathematics and English. Develop training programs to build teacher capacity to include the National Training Day initiative. Improve the rate of performance for PEP 6 to align with the proficient and highly proficient ranking. Implement viable and reliable appraisal systems for reward, recognition, and treatment. Collate and analyze performance appraisal data and respond to deficits. Operationalize STEM project-based initiatives. Review and revamp where appropriate the subject and course offerings at sixth form for new and emerging programs aligned to labor market needs. Increase the number of grade 11 students transitioning to grade 12, higher education. Increase the number of grade 11 students transitioning to grade 12 as a key initiative under the K-13 strategy. Operationalize the work experience committees to strengthen the work experience program at secondary. Promote a culture of fiduciary responsibility among key personnel. Develop and implement Safe School program. Implement and monitor asset management systems. Implement, monitor, and report on the school-wide positive behavior intervention SWPs in schools. Yes, I hear you. The expectations are high, and that is fine because we're accustomed to hard work. But today, I would like for you to embrace not just working hard, but a spirit of partnership and collegiality. We have retreated as a family, acknowledging that each school is different, because the variables that define you are indeed different. Determine your school's brand and plan the scope that brand you through your school improvement plans. Michelle Obama reminds us that success has nothing to do with perfection, because indeed, perfection is a trap. We just need to get started. Let's hear from her now.
Stop worrying so much about getting things wrong. Success has nothing to do with perfection. So stop being nervous, raise your hand, use your voice, get it wrong, learn from your mistakes, and keep moving on. And don't worry about what other people think. It doesn't matter. I'm 50 years old now, and nothing anyone said to me when I was young that was negative matters. It doesn't matter. Ignore the doubters and work hard, because life is hard work. Don't be afraid of it. Just do it.
This retreat is a chance for us to reflect on our current practices, learn from each other's experiences, and collectively chart a course towards even greater success. I am proud to lead the best of the 7 regions. I thank you ever so much for your unwavering support and commitment to high standards of educational outcomes. I wish for you memorable experiences for the duration of the retreat. This is the region, and we inspire and nurture greatness here. My blessing, everyone.
I think director deserves another more robust round of applause. And you know, and if you didn't know, I'll tell you that as moderator, I have certain privileges. And one of the privileges is to call out people on the spot. But before I do, Director, do I have your permission to utilize my bilingual skills?
Certainly.
Okay, I speak 2 languages. I speak standard English and automatic patois. So I will be using these. I got permission to change.
You'll be code switching.
To code switch. Thank you. So I begin by saying, congratulations, primary schools. What are we going to go on with ourselves? The prep score, them couldn't pretty no more. I was in my bed many nights just looking at my schools and how pretty their prep scores were. That is what happens when you're single and have no life. You spend all night admiring the prep scores. Principal Powell, I hear you laughing. Can I ask the representatives of the 24 high schools to stand, please? Oh, no, forward, so. Many of you are in the back. Now, that do not look like 24. And all, some of them forward. No, forward, man. Guess why I'm asking you to stand? What year are we now in? We are in the year 2025. And I see these children with these pretty pep scores. You know what people are going to say when they get to the high school. And I better make sure them come right out. A sorry food. When we used to say, when I get the pin of them fuba. Please to note that these pep children are not fuba. They are proficient and highly proficient. Clap yourself. And you may be seated. Mrs. Brown comes now awaiting the cue. So that's number 1. I noticed that the director made a bold pronouncement and said, Region 1, we are coming for you. Did you hear her? Yes. Clap yourselves if you know that we can come for Region 1. You're not afraid of them. Now I'm going to ask principals to just volunteer and use your teacher voice from where you are. Director went through a whole list of about 40 initiatives that should be reflected somewhere in your SIP. Can we call out a few? Primary schools, let me start with you. And then I hear any? We should call that director to put them back up? Because by the time you leave here, they better be in the SIP, right, director? Let me start at infant, right from the start. Infant schools. Did you hear any initiative that must be embodied in your SIP? Talk to me. Clap yourself. Did you hear certification? One more infant school. One more. Eh? That was an initiative in the presentation? Primary schools. Did you hear any initiatives that you should be focusing on in your SIP? I see a hand at the back. God of grace, monitoring of early reading. Was she correct? So all of them have in the SIP, drop it in right now. You have your laptop. Can I hear another one from primary? Improvement in literacy and math. Is he correct? Principal Curlew, is he correct? Jesus, then coward. Them afraid children know they never put in an SIP. You have time, man, you have time. Secondary, did we hear some initiatives that must be in the school improvement plans at the secondary level? You think? Oh, that's one. Is that a primary school principal? No. Did she think or does she know? But before they pass 5, they must what? Sit 5. Look up on yourself, you were listening. I can see people dropping right now the initiatives. You see them, director? Dropping them in their operational plan right away. They're not even waiting for the retreat to start. Marvelous. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Brown Thompson, am I good to go? Am I good to go? Yes? We are standing by for some entertainment. And I'm waiting for the cue to be told that we're good to go. Okay, I'm being told in 10 minutes time because our performers are still in registration. So at this time, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit earlier than planned, because our performers are currently registering, we are going to take one of the highlights of today's opening ceremony. We have in our midst a man who is a man among men, our keynote speaker, but the honors are not mine. At this time, we call on Principal Bolt Morgan to introduce our keynote speaker. Make her welcome.
Pleasant morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Director of Regional Education Services, Region 6, Mrs. Sophia Forbes Hall. Assistant Chief Education Officer, Dr. Olivine Evans. Senior Education Officers, Mr. Floyd Kelly, Mrs. Fiona Morris-Webb, Mrs. Stephanie Webb-Parker, Dr. Novelet McLean-Francis, and Dr. Lamar Edgehill. Colleague Education Officers and Principals and Vice Principals, other members of the staff of Region 6, senior teachers and others, pleasant morning to you again. The task is mine to introduce this very special gentleman in the person of our keynote speaker, Dr. Canute Thompson. Dr. Canute Thompson is a professor of educational policy, planning and leadership who serves as the Pro-Vice Chancellor of the Board of Undergraduate Studies at UWI. Professor Thompson serves as Director of the Caribbean Center for Educational Planning and was the Project Director for the UWI Governance Recommendation and Implementation Committee from 2022 to 2024. Professor Thompson holds a Doctor of Philosophy degree with high commendations in Education Administration and Leadership and a postgraduate diploma in Management Studies from the UWI, a Master of Arts with honors from the Eden Theological Seminary and a Bachelor of Arts with honors from the UWI. He also earned a certificate in Educational Sector Planning from the International Institute of Educational Planning and a Management Consultant International Certificate from the Council of Management Consulting Institutes. His work as a leadership coach and management consultant has included projects with UNESCO, UNICEF, the Inter-American Development Bank, organizations of Eastern Caribbean states, and the government of Jamaica. His publications include 7 single-authored books, 1 co-authored monograph, 4 co-edited books, 7 book chapters, and 20 journal articles. Regionally and internationally, he has also delivered over 30 conferences and special presentations and has had over 200 newspaper articles published. Professor Thompson has earned several awards. Among them are 6 UWI Mona Campus Principals Award, 2 for Best Publication Article category in 2019 and in 2020 for his book, Reimagining Educational Leadership in the Caribbean. 2 for most outstanding researcher, 2020 and 2021, and again 2 in 2023 on behalf of the CCEP for research activity generating the most funds and research with the most development impact. In 2022, he was awarded a bronze medal in the Independent Publishers Book Awards for his 2020 book, Education and Development, Policy Imperatives for Jamaica and the Caribbean. He co-chaired the Vice Chancellor's Reimagining UA 2020-2021 Committee and is a member of the editorial board of the International Society for Educational Planning, the Caribbean Journal of Mixed Methods Research, and the Journal of Human Resource Management. He's the founding president of the Jamaica Chapter, Caribbean Institute of Certified Management Consultants, a former Ministry of Education representative on the University Council of Jamaica, a former chair of the Advisory Board of the Passport, Immigration and Citizenship Agency, PICA, in Jamaica, and a former board member of the Council of Community Colleges in Jamaica. His international affiliations include membership in the American Educational Research Association, the International Society of Educational Planning, and the Philosophy of Education Society of North America. Wow. Isn't that a wow?
Yes.
It is indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Thompson's scholarly contributions and ability to provide unique insights on issues in the field of education are widely respected. And today, we are honored that he is here to provide us with some of those insights. I invite you to join with me in giving a robust welcome to Professor Knut Thompson, our keynote speaker.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for the warm welcome and thanks for the introduction. All right, so I'm to share with you for the next hour and a half, I'm told, on this topic I've chosen. Elements of effective school leadership. Elements of effective school improvement planning. Evidence from research and experiences. I'm grateful to my good friend, your regional director, Mrs. Forbes Hall, for the invitation. I want to recognize all friends in the audience, but especially Dr. Olivine Evans, with whom I've worked extensively, and to affirm and celebrate my former students, many of whom are in the audience, and my neighbors and friends from different places and spaces. So let's have this conversation. I want to suggest that I'm going to use what I call elements of the Socratic method, which means I'm going to raise a lot of questions and leave those questions with you to ponder. You remember the story of Socrates and Plato. Plato learned through the questions that Socrates would ask. So I'm going to pose some questions for your consideration as well as sharing some data and some reflections from my work and from my research. So here's the structure of the presentation. I signaled to you that I'll offer some questions to ponder. I'll briefly provide some definitions of some concepts just to create the framework for some parts of the conversation. Then I'll share some stories about school improvement planning and then talk about some leadership initiatives for attaining and sustaining school improvement planning. I want to make this a conversation, and I want to suggest that the theme or the handle for this conversation is rap. So let's have a rap. Yeah? Let's have a rap. So the first word, well, before I come to the elements of the rap, I want to pose these questions for your consideration. Does the performance of the Jamaican education system require drastic intervention? What the practice refers to as turnaround initiatives, or is it possible to achieve performance improvements through piecemeal interventions, piecemeal incremental improvements? What are your thoughts? Ponder with me. Does the performance of the schools in this region, the now famous Region 6, does the performance require drastic interventions or incremental improvements? I'm sure you would respond by saying, hey, no, we're doing pretty well. We just need to move along, press along gradually. Is that the case? Okay, so again, it's a question to ponder. I note from the very useful data that our regional director provided, it struck me that 57.3% of our students are functioning at the highly proficient level, and another 6% at the highly proficient. How do you feel about 57%? And what are the strategies and targets for moving beyond 57% to some other number? And does the attainment of that higher number require incremental, small baby steps, or does the intervention require a drastic intervention? So it's something to ponder. It's something to ponder. Is a single digit highly proficient where you want to remain for the next 2 years, next 5 years, or do you want to exponentially move that 6.7% to 30-odd% in the shortest possible time? Just asking you, just wondering with you and pondering with you. All right. So the MOE&I, as you are all aware, has this classification when it does its inspection of schools. All right. So they have exceptionally high, which I call EH, good, satisfactory, unsatisfactory, needs immediate support. So I ask you this question without giving you a chance to do any serious stop to assess. From your exposure to your schools, here I'm talking to EOs firstly, from your exposure to your school's EOs, let me see the hands of the EOs inside here. How many EOs we have, just to understand the composition of the audience. We have half a dozen EOs. From your exposure to your schools, on the face of it, in what category would you place your schools were you to be conducting a mind assessment at this point? And for our principals and our vice principals, in what category is your school? Would you say your school is performing exceptionally high, or good, or satisfactory? The last data from the NEI had showed that the overall map of effective versus ineffective schools showed that about 55%. A subsequent study which focused on leadership had shown a higher percentage. But I want to ask you, in what category would you place your school? So far I have offered no position. I have articulated no bias. I have taken no stance. I've simply asked you to ponder some questions. And by the way, that's what academics do. We put to 10%, that's improvement. But if you move from 6% to 30%, that is radical transformation. But generally speaking, what we're here exploring are activities within this domain of teaching methods, curriculum design, assessment strategies, and school leadership. That's what the discussion around school improvement involves. And here I'm probing with you whether the context of the reality in Region 6 requires, in some cases probably, radical interventions, or do we require, generally speaking, incremental movements? Something to ponder. And the school you lead, the school you supervise, you know well enough to answer and to ponder that question. Let us get this into this further definition. So let us start now to have my rap. And the first word of rap is will. Will. And what Michel Obama spoke about just now is precisely that. Just get up and do it. Don't worry about the probability that you might get it wrong. There's an even greater probability that you'll get it right. The will to do. How strong is your will as you lead? How resolute is your commitment to do? Oh, sorry, let me go back and pass this slide. So, I found this in part of the research, one of those pieces of research I was doing some time ago. I worked 10 years now, 12 years now, by some scholars, Woods, Husband, and Brown. They were studying the challenges of schools in a particular area of London. And they found that those schools that had experienced turnaround, drastic improvement, were characterized by leadership at all levels, which focused on high levels or pursued high funding, developed external partnerships, and from the list again provided by the RD, certainly the question of private-public partnerships was raised. External partnerships, but what struck me, which I haven't read, and a resilient approach to external, a resilient approach to external government policies and pressure. Now, you won't get me saying that there is an inappropriately aligned relationship between schools and governments. But what I can tell you is that there are times when the center does not take full account of all the factors that should inform the instructions and the policies that are developed. There are times when the local reality requires further exploration in order to determine the appropriateness of the policy prescription for the entire nation. In other words, policy making by nature is global in its application, but for its effective implementation, policy application must be nuanced to the peculiarities of a situation. And what Woods, Husband, and Brown found is that the schools that did well were those in which there was the will on the part of the leadership to engage policymakers and senior administrators in interpreting and applying policy prescriptions. That's their experience. Remember, I'm here to talk about elements of effective school improvement planning, reflecting on evidence from the research and experience. That was their experience. I want to come right home. Well, let me just mention these two guys and throw a little, a gentle ball in the room by saying that one of the bodies of knowledge, Madam Director, that has developed in the practice globally and for which there may be evidence locally is that a school that is underperforming for a substantial period of time may require for its transformation new leadership to engage in the task of transformation. In other words, you can't quite ask the leadership that has been carrying the school along at a suboptimal level to then suddenly undertake transformation. That's the experience of these other scholars from their practice. And let us place that in this space for contemplation. So remember, an academic puts the facts and the perspectives out there and invite conversation and reflection. I want to come to our local context. And a couple of years ago, 3 of my graduate students and I, we undertook a study. I don't know if you can see the board clearly. The study was entitled, or the article was entitled, Leadership Strategies for Turning Around Underperforming Schools, an examination of the experiences of 2 schools in Jamaica. And I'll tell you a little bit about what we found in this study. And I'm laying this out for your consideration as you contemplate the implementation of your school improvement plan. And the larger point I want to make in referencing this, remember I'm talking about the will, that it is a necessary first step to have a plan which ticks off all the components, which has all the necessary objectives and strategies. But I want to use this language that is now common in international conversation. A good plan is necessary but not sufficient. A good plan is necessary but not sufficient. The engine behind the plan is the will to do what needs to be done to implement that plan. Thank you. So one of the questions you will need to ask yourself at the end of the next 3 days, when you would have matured and upgraded your draft plan, the draft plans with which you have come, one of the questions you want to ask yourself, do you possess the will to do what needs to be done under that plan? So we spoke with these 2 schools. Identify them if you can. They have code names, obviously. Seaview High, is it? But I think there's a Seaview in Kingston coming. Yes?
Yeah, it's primary.
Yes, it's a Seaview primary.
Yes.
But our school was Seaview High. All right. School that was opened, it's in Kingston somewhere. Was opened in the 1970s. Population of about 1,200. And then there's Oasis High in the beautiful parish of St. Catherine, which opened in 1980, a population of over 2,000. In the 2015 MOE&I report found that these 2 schools were in need of immediate support. They were, no, actually I think it was the earlier report, I think it might have been the 2010 report. They were in need of immediate support. These schools were in the basket and in need of immediate support. So school improvement wouldn't help them. They needed a radical turnaround. And in the conversation with these schools, let me share with you some of the things we found, which I call evidence of will. Mr. Zinger, the principal of Oasis High, he shared that one of his convictions about the process of turning around a school is that there needs to be palpable evidence of this turnaround. So he paid attention, first of all, to the image, the public-facing image of the school. That school, he says, was just dirty and misused by the community for all kinds of ungodly things. It was a thoroughfare for those who were up to no good. And he felt the first step was to create a safe, enclosed, sterile space called the school compound. But he went beyond that. He said that the language that he sought to impose, or infuse rather, in the conversations around this, the need to transform the school was that everybody got to be on board. If you're not on board with the change, then you could make a structured decision and take a calculated position to exit yourself. He said you can't achieve transformation if people are pulling in several directions. And he demanded that you take a stance. All right? You're either with this train or you're not with this train. The will to get it done. Seaview High, we called him Mr. Candid. He described himself as friendly and firm. Interesting, friendly but firm. And he strived, he said, to have a good relationship with staff and students. But he would make the decisions on his own if necessary. Staff members, while admitting that he listens to them, tries to implement the recommendations, noted that he was ready to make to take a decision by himself and was unwavering in his demand that excellence is the only standard. And the students themselves, because the methodology used in the study involved interview with the principal, interview with members of staff, interview with students. The students themselves said that he was like a father, loving and approachable, but strict when it comes to the rules. In other words, you can have love and firmness go hand in hand. And one of those schools, by the way, was the subject of a British documentary which looked at how the school had transformed itself. Just to wrap up on this will issue. Both principals recognized the immense value of leading from in front, both by being visible as well, listen to this, as well as being a model of urgency in getting things done, commitment, respect for self and others, accountability, and responsibility for results. I want to hear this. So you are claiming, let me use that rather almost incidental critical word, you're claiming that you're going to be developing a plan for your school. I'm saying in response that a plan is necessary but not enough. The energy that drives that plan will be the will to get it done. And critical subcomponents of that will and the exercise of that leadership must be that you show urgency, commitment, respect for your staff, respect for those on whose energies you intend to call, and accountability for your actions as you seek to hold your staff accountable. Those of you who would have been familiar with one of my latest theories, which I have articulated and expanded in my latest book. My book is called Reimaginative Leadership, Concepts and Applications. And with your permission, Madam Chair, I'm going to ask that you become purchasers. I love to advertise. But one of the things I describe in that book is a concept called mutual accountability. Mutual accountability. One of the mistakes leaders make is that of believing that accountability is a one-way street. I hold you accountable and you shut up and do what I tell you. Those leaders who operate that way are living in the past. Mutual accountability says that I hold you accountable and you hold me accountable. And there's a mutuality. And it goes further to say, my authority, my moral authority, that is, to hold you accountable, is predicated upon the degree to which I'm willing to submit to you holding me accountable. You know, principles have a certain level of latitude. But I find it somewhat incongruent with good governance that principals would come to school in an hour. They have no regard for, they just come anytime they feel like. Them on the road, them there in the yard, them do everything, and will come down hard on teachers if they're late because they have a medical appointment. You can't run school that way, you know. You cannot get people to buy into your plan if you have no regard for being held accountable. All right. So I'm presenting this as a must. All right. So Mr. Zinger emphasized. Here's Mr. Zinger. Mr. Zinger emphasized that he held himself to the strictest standards of accountability in all respects. And he listed them: punctuality, deportment, dress, interpersonal relationships, and treatment of students. All right? How are you leading? And I'm saying that as you draft these glorious plans, they will be worth very little if you do not have the moral authority to implement. Your staff will stay one side and just watch you fail. Yeah? All right. Of course, he always calls for raising the bars. So that's the story of these two Jamaican schools. Both schools had risen after a period of about 10 years, risen to a level of excellence, and did a follow-up study on them both to see where they were later. But time doesn't permit me to go into that. All right. I want to talk about resources. So I want to go back to my Socratic approach. All right. So let me begin with what I call some unquestioned principles about resources in school improvement planning. One of the things that I think is very common in Jamaica as what I call a national psyche is blame game. Everything that is wrong is the other guy, not me. The blame game. So I want to present to you. So I want to suggest that there are 4 principles. Perhaps there are several others, but I want to highlight these 4. You must state in your plans the resources you require, or else it's not a plan, it's a wish. All right? You must state the resources required to get them. All right? Resources must be used appropriately and effectively. The assumption must be that you're asking for these things in order to put them to specific use. So you want to ask yourself the question, how diligent have been the processes for the provision of those resources and the use of those resources? And do you continuously assess the impact of the resources on your performance? So you look at these, and this is where monitoring becomes a critical and essential component. You want to track how aligned your objectives are to the resources you say you need. But beyond that, you want to assess whether in the utilization of those resources you are achieving your objectives. Because what often happens is that the resources are consumed, but the objectives are not realized. And when that happens, somebody must be held accountable. I won't say who, but somebody must be held accountable. And typically, it's a person who's taking decisions on the use of those resources who must be the first to be held accountable. Is that true? Is that heresy? Are you going to throw me out for that? No? All right. I hope we'll be friends. All right. So, here are some questions I want to ask our principals and vice principals. And we could make this question historical as well as futuristic. As you reflect on your last period of planning, did you ask for and receive the resources you needed in your plans? Did you? You asked but didn't receive. All right. That kind of confession is good for the soul. Yes. You asked but you didn't receive. And I suspect that might be a story that others can tell. All right? Nonetheless, I ask you my next question. Did you use the resources as planned? And I ask you my next question. Can you show the impact of those resources on your school's performance? All right? I have some questions for the ministry. My good friend, Dr. Evans, and my good friend, Dr. Mrs. Forbes Hall, and the other great people. So here are my 3 questions from the ministry. Very, very tame questions. Very tame questions. Were approved plans provided with the resources requested?
Yes.
Maybe I should ask the question to the audience in your hearing. Yeah. But I'm not into creating sides. I just throw out the question. If you want to answer, you can answer. Were approved plans provided with the resources required? How were gaps in resource support handled? Were plans altered and targets amended? What did we do when we realized that the year was ending and the resources required were not received? What did we do? Madam RD, my questions are just left there for pondering. And finally, has the ministry assessed the impacts of the resource availability on performance of schools? There are many things that affect performance. And I'm saying one of them is resources. And so as we wrap, this is my story around R. The question of how resources are articulated as required for planning implementation, how resources are made available, and finally, how persons, both the resource providers and the resource users, are held accountable for those resources. Which takes me to my next, accountability. And my last comment took us there. This image of accountability is a curious one. Nuts and bolts. Nuts and bolts. Accountability represents the nuts and bolts which hold the integrity of a plan together. Right? If there is no accountability, you can throw the plan away. Because if nobody is held accountable for the performance under the plan, then you might as well not have a plan. Accountability represents the nuts and bolts. I'm grateful that you took us back in time, Mrs. Forbes Hall, in locating the history of the practice of SIP with over the last 3 decades or so. Excellent contextual framing. So one of the studies which was funded by the USAID was a study by Lockheed Harris and J.R. Sondero, they did in 2022. It was a sponsored study in 2010. And they conducted a study examining a program of support provided for poor performing schools on the basis of the needs identified in their school improvement plans. So catch the lineup. Here were poor underperforming schools, but they had school improvement plans in which resources had been identified to assist them to move from their status of performance. The program was implemented in 72 schools. I think you mentioned those 72 schools. The program was implemented in 72 schools between 98 and 2005. The results showed that schools with school improvement plans did not outperform comparable schools that did not have plans. So you ask yourself the question, is a plan really necessary? But I don't think that's the only question to ask. The big question to ask is whether resources were being provided for schools with plans as well as schools without plans. So we come back to that resource issue in the context of the question of accountability. And the will, absolutely. These findings at face value suggest that having a plan does not make a difference. And so the next stage of that discussion would be for you as principals and vice principals, to ask yourself, what is the record of your performance under your last plan? And how much wisdom and insight have you gleaned as you now prepare this next plan? Did your plan make a difference then? And if not, will it make a difference tomorrow? And for that to happen, there has to be will, there has to be resources, and there has to be accountability. I'm wrapping up. I know my time is going. I'm going to share this quickly about this matter of accountability. So I did this other study among schools, of course here in Jamaica, both high schools and primary schools. And we asked 4 questions. This was in 2019. And this research was designed to establish what are some of the ingredients Dr. Evans, sorry. I have a girlfriend named Olivine Burke. she's a colleague. I hope the reporter didn't think that. That's a genuine joke. Dr. Evans wanted to find out what were some of the key ingredients to make things happen. And I referenced Dr. Evans because she engaged the Caribbean Center for Educational Planning in working with schools that were not doing well. All right. This was in the context of a report from the ministry that school improvement plans had been received from 95% of schools. So almost every school had a school improvement plan. But we were not seeing a galloping of improvements across the sector. So my study was concerned with understanding. So one of the research questions were, how extensively? So I went in with the bias that for plans to be successful, they must involve extensive stakeholders. They must have extensive stakeholder involvement. So how extensively are staff members and other stakeholders involved in the planning process? Then the second question, what are the factors associated with effective school improvement planning? All right, let me show what I found. It was good to know that 74% of staff, of academic staff, say they were involved. That was just good news. 3/4 of the staff said they were involved. Half of the non-academic staff said they were involved. And just under half of students say they were involved. Overall, 50% of stakeholders say they were involved. 50% is good, but perhaps not sufficient, because it means that 1 in 2 of your stakeholders were not involved. Clearly, you can't have the whole room full of everybody involved. There has to be a process of representation. But I consider this good news that 74% of staff, academic staff, said they were involved. I sought to make meaning of that. This is just descriptive statistics. What can I learn beyond that? All right? So through the data, those of you who use SPSS and other quantitative tools, I threw the data into a bucket, call it the rotated component matrix, kind of spin it around to see what comes out on top. And to answer my second question, what are the factors associated with effective planning? Look at the list. Involvement, obviously, no surprises from the previous slide. Accountability. Accountability. Am I still on A? Remember I was spelling right? Accountability. Mode of implementation. And this, when you look at the study, it was concerned with the extent to which the commitments under the plan are executed. Does the school do what it says it will do in the plan? And then the final one, efficacy. Does the plan achieve its objectives? And look what I found. So almost 70% of the weight of the data was in relation to involvement, accountability, implementation, and efficacy. What this says to me, and this is the conclusion I draw, as I quickly leave the stage, and I just touch on B as I go, that your plans, no matter how well written, well, let's begin at another stage. If your plans are not prepared with extensive stakeholder involvement, then you are not likely to achieve stakeholder participation in its implementation. All right? It is key. So I don't know what these drafts are that you've brought here, but it is my fervent hope on your behalf and on Jamaica's behalf that those plans were constructed with extensive stakeholder involvement. Your academic staff, your ancillary staff, your admin staff, your students, the members of your community. When the Caribbean Center for Education Planning does school improvement planning with or assist schools in developing their plans, we make sure that we have a member or two from the PTA, from the board, from the vendors, yes? And as well, of course, with schools requiring path and so on, with people from the Ministry of Social Security. So there has to be wide stakeholder involvement. Do it. That's the right way to do it. And then, here's something that we also found, that there is a sense of value, a sense of worthwhileness that stakeholders feel when they're involved. And I put this to you. Isn't it the case that one of the worst things that somebody can do to you is to make a decision that affects you without consulting you? Yes. Bear that in mind as you plan. So, let me just summarize this and then come to B. Knowing the realities and situations and abilities of your staff and students is critical. Planning realistically, collectively, compassionately, and pragmatically with those in mind is necessary. Setting achievable and transformative goals focused on student growth is your responsibility. Negotiating the system to leverage resources. Focusing less, and this is something I'm introducing for the first time. Focusing less on the balance in your bank account and more on the betterment of your students and staff is critical. Monitor progress and hold yourself and others accountable. If you're not willing to be held accountable, you have no moral authority to hold anybody accountable. And I'll leave with P. I want to say that P, personal. This planning thing is a very personal thing. Those parents feel it, your staff members are affected by it, and you need to lead it in a way that shows that you are an embodiment of it. And as I leave, I share with this. I ask you these questions. Remember I said I'm going to be Socrates today. So I ask you, in your role as the embodiment of the plan, the persona of the plan, yes? For what are you known? What do your staff know about you and think of you? You know that it matters? Your staff's perceptions of you is a critical variable in your success as a leader. So what do they know of you? How much confidence do they have in you? Do you show respect to your staff? Do you inspire or do you intimidate? Do you bamboozle or do you motivate? Will your staff regard you as a credible advocate for the plan you are preparing? Or will they hiss your teeth and say, I feel your business when you go back with it? I'm finishing now. I would just want to emphasize the importance of the person who is the leader. Another study I did with some colleagues in the Caribbean Center for Educational Planning. We're studying the problem of migration, teacher migration. Repeat it, go back. You want that one? Did you say presenter or selector? All right. Yes. You know, while they take that picture, let me tell you something I normally ask when I sit on interview panels. I used to ask this question while I was in the ministry. While I worked in the ministry, I served various colleges as a rep and board. One of the questions I always ask a person who's applying for the job of principal, I would ask them two questions. What is in your closet that you need to bring out? Of course, that's a difficult question. People would go on with it. But then I came with a more pointed question. Were you to be given the job of principal, when you begin, these are people applying for jobs at the schools they serve. When you go back and start to talk about things like writing up lesson plans and punctuality, and what do they say? Will people say, could you? Or will they say, welcome, we are glad for your leadership, yeah? Seriously, your person matters. So here's where I'm ending there. So, those of you who know me might know of my interest in politics. So, we have been beating the horse of salaries as the reason people migrate. And it is indeed one of those factors. It's one of the factors. But I'll tell you this. In a study we did involving almost 160 teachers, some of whom had left already and some of whom were planning to leave, a massive 71% of them said the quality of leadership offered by their principals is a reason they're leaving. Let that sink in. That's all right. Thank you.
Professor Thompson, I'm sure you don't need me to tell you that this entire room had your full attention. Am I correct, school leaders? And from my vantage point observing, I could see the reflection going on. I could read the thoughts on the faces. I could see some people sinking a little bit lower in their chairs when the introspection began. But that is a good thing. Did we get a lot of food for thought, ladies and gentlemen? I'm sure you did. And on your behalf, we call on Principal Sherman Powell to make a presentation to our keynote speaker. Make her welcome.
Good morning, everyone. I ask to adopt the protocols observed by our ably Master of Ceremony. Dr. Thompson, can you please come? As I put a wrap on the discussion that you had with us, the conversation that you had with us this morning, I want to say how thought-provoking it was. And you led us down a road where we had to dig deep. As the moderator said, some of us were hiding, while some of us were saying yes. My table was very vocal. And I know as you look down there and you looked at us talking about the resources that either we get them or we didn't use them well. I want to tell you this morning that we were really, really appreciative of this presentation. We will take with us every single word, especially that of whether we're catering to all of our stakeholders. And as we leave this room today, I'll let you know that all of what you said will be placed in our SIP. And when you should see us next year this time, we will give you the result of what you spoke about today. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for doing the honors, Principal Powell. Ladies and gentlemen, they're coming all the way from the highway of the ferry. And they are ready and waiting. Please put your hands together for the first appearance of the dance troupe from the Jose Marti Technical High School. Make them welcome.
And I've got to rise up, believe in the stress. No longer will I There's so many more than sand. Some you want replenish, pure and clean and too long we been under this man. Some are sick from the riches and them need the hand. Once them is stupid and not found you can easy enough for a cabin to enter through a needle line. Now it is for a rich time to enter in a Zion. Take it from Iman, so till I'm laid to rest. Yes, always be the rest. There's no living in the rest. I know the East is the best. Lord, propaganda that spread. Tongues will have to confess. Oh, I'm in bondage. Living is a mess. And I've got to rise up, alleviate the stress. No longer will I expose my weakness. He who seek knowledge begins with humbleness. Words are put to separate, yet me still penniless. For the food up on me table, master, God bless. All of the needy and shelterless. Ethiopia awaits all prince and princess. Till I'm laid to rest. Yes, always be depressed. There's no life in the West. I know the East is the best. All the propaganda gets spread. Tongues will have to confess. What could have what's about the East? Everybody want a piece. African free Africans, man. Messiah speak. Unification, no nobody feel. What a day. We're walking down redemption street. Man up our head. Why we in a hand one and all? Make we try the promised land. But you go down a Congo and then trash them on the land. The city of Paris where Selassie come from. From Addis Ababa in a Botswana. Then Kenya end up in a Ghana. Oh, what a beauty me inside behold. Holy Ethiopia protect me from the cold. Till I'm laid to rest. Yes, always be depressed. There's no life in the West. I know the East is the best. All the propaganda that spread. Tongues will have to confess. Organize, centralize, come as one.
Ladies and gentlemen, you just saw the first performance from the Jose Marti Technical High School coming out of QEC 6-1. Make some noise. And while they go off to change for their second item, we have a few housekeeping items that we want to take just now while they do a quick change. So first of all, we'd like to recognize our partners. Without their partnership, we would not have been able to host an opening ceremony and a conference, a retreat of this magnitude and style. So please put your hands together for the Tip Friendly Society, Kingston Bookshop, the JTA Cooperative Credit Union Macon branch, Brighton Engineering, and you just saw them, Cousin Marty Technical High School. And we're coming towards the end of the opening ceremony, ladies and gentlemen, and the real business begins. So please note, you have it in your email and or WhatsApp, but here is the layout for the sessions immediately after the opening ceremony. Session 1 will be strategic planning for transformation, standards for school improvement. That should have been 11:30 to 12:30. We may be a little bit behind. The hour between 12:30 and 1:30 is slated for lunch. Immediately after lunch, for the hour from 1:30 to 2:30, will be the early reading intervention. From 2:30 to 3:30, school improvement and the human resource portfolio. And the last session of the day, 3:30 to 4:30, or maybe a little bit beyond, since we're a little bit off schedule, will be the principal's town hall meeting with the regional director. We are on standby for the second item from Jose Marti, Master Control. I believe you have some videos which will fill the space until they return. Thank you. Jose Martin Technical High School just removed any doubt. Let me hear it one more time. Jose Martin. And of course, we must acknowledge the teachers who have worked with them and traveled with them today. Put your hands together for Mrs. Natalie Hyman and Miss Shelley Ann Carson. School leaders, if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a great leader. Leadership is the capacity to turn vision into reality. And above all, a leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. Ladies and gentlemen, the principal's planning retreat is now declared officially open. We close with the singing of the national anthem. Eternal Father, bless our land. Guard us with thy mighty hand. Keep us free from evil powers. Be our lives through countless hours. To our leaders, great defender, grant true wisdom from above. Justice, truth be ours forever. Jamaica, land we love. Jamaica. Jamaica, Jamaica, land we love. Teach us true respect for all, stir response to duty's call, strengthen us the weak to cherish. Give us vision lest we perish. Knowledge send us, Heavenly Father. Grant true wisdom from above. Justice, truth be ours forever. Jamaica, land we love. Jamaica, 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 land we love. We go directly into session 1. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, principals, vice principals, senior teachers who are here. How are you doing? You sound like you drove a very long way to get here, like myself, right? Can I invite you to stand one more time as we move into the other session? Can you just stand? Circle the people at your table. Can I just invite everyone to stand quickly? And in standing, please do as you now feel for a minute. If you want to sit back down, you want to stretch, you want to smile, you want to take in a deep breath, please do so. You're at liberty, you're at the age and you're at the stage that you can do for a minute. 1 minute, because our next session was slated to start start at 11:30. I'm the moderator for the session and I am a man of time. And that session is slated to last for 1 hour, so you understand that they are behind. Our presenters are here and they are queuing up their presentation. So within the next minute, we will start that session. Please, I ask you, if you do not necessarily have to exit the room, do not exit the room. So within a minute, we will start our session 1. So ladies and gentlemen, principals, vice principals, senior teachers who are in the room, may I know of your attention. So you would have had a wonderful interface with Dr. Thompson, and I tell you a quick joke. So Dr. Thompson taught me when I was doing my master's, and he also had the opportunity of teaching my wife years later. So when I was saying it to somebody there, and I have 2 daughters, I said, if you're not careful, you may end up teaching the children too. But I said to you, take the lessons that you would have learned from what you would have said. And interestingly, I found that the general conversation about school improvement and the leadership that is required is so interesting, and that buzz in the room is about to continue. With someone who I've known for many years, and I will not be reading her profile because time is of the essence and she has a very long profile. But we have 2 doctors from the school, from the Ministry of Education, the Standards Development Unit. Dr. Olivine Evans was a senior officer in Region 5, and Dr. Edgel was Regional Mathematics Coordinator. That is as much as say. They are not operating in that current capacity now, but they have taken all the skills that they have learned and nurtured over the years, and they are now operating in a capacity that they will share with us. Dr. Evans has extensive knowledge in the area. She and I have had many long discussions and debates. And I'm very sure that today, within the hour, she will engage you in the session that we have themed Strategic Planning for Transformation, standards for school improvement. The rationale from the regional perspective is that effective school leadership requires a strategic alignment between the school improvement plan, which is the SIP, and the school self-evaluation, which you should have submitted in the 30th of June, hopefully all of you did. This session aims to help school leaders understand the interconnectedness of planning and evaluation, ensuring that goals, actions, and outcomes are clearly defined, measured, and aligned with national goals. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point in time, I invite to the lectern my very, very close friend and colleague, Dr. Olivine Evans, who will walk you through this 1 hour session.
Pleasant morning, Region 6. Good morning. All right, that sounds better than the applause. So you sound like you're ready for me now. So how are we this morning? So, Dr. Thompson come hurt up your head, ask you some questions. But you know, it's as if Dr. Thompson saw my presentation, because his presentation is a prequel to my presentation. And so we're going to jump right into it, but I must first acknowledge Mr. Kelly and the Region 6 team who invited me to be a part of your session over the next 3 days. We are always happy to support. We have been working with the regions. I've been to some QECs, and we are always happy, and we're here, ready, willing, and always able to continue the support as we talk about school improvement. Now, whether or not your response to Dr. Thompson's question about whether it's a turnaround initiative that's transformative, or it is a more incremental improvement, whatever that response is going to be, it is a matter that you need a school improvement plan. And the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth and Information has established some standards for the school improvement plan that you are expected to develop. Now, I was most happy to hear that you have completed your SSE. Is that so? Let me see the hands of all the schools that have completed their SSEs already. Everybody? That is not all the hands. That you don't sound so convinced. So it means then I can just rush through the SSE component of this presentation because you're already familiar with the standards relevant and specific to the school self-evaluation plan. So on screen we have the objectives for this session, and we can look at those. So I'm going to look at, Dr. Thompson spoke about how critical the SIP is, and the fact that doing an SIP and leaving it there just isn't enough. We talk about the will to implement, but the matter of whether or not that research, that was very interesting to me, the schools, based on his research, the schools that there wasn't any distinction between the schools that actually had a SIP and those that didn't have a SIP in terms of the outcomes. But I must ask Dr. Thompson, were those SIPs implemented with fidelity? Because that is a critical question that we have to ask. So, if we agree that the SIP is your roadmap, the roadmap to growth and improvement, we need a plan to get to where we are. Our SIP establishes where we currently are now and look at where we intend to go as an institution. So the roadmap, the SIP treats with those areas that an institution identified as being critical for that growth and development that you identified coming out of your SSE. When you completed your SSE, last year you submitted SSE and SIP. You got back some scores, did you? You didn't get back any scores? For those who did, do you know what those scores represent? I see one with a hand on the bottom. No. Alright, let me back up a little bit more. In your SIP manual, there is an SSE review criteria and an SIP review criteria. That is what your education officer utilizes to score, first and foremost, your SSE. Your SSE, there are 7 criteria, and you get a maximum of 4 for each of those criteria. So 7 times 4 means that you can get up to how much? Max grades? 28, right? No. The matrix for the criteria outlines what constitutes a 1, what constitutes 0. We start at 0. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so when you got back those scores for your SSE is expected to meet the standard before you are allowed to move on to your SIP. So if you didn't get any score last year, ensure that this time around you ask for the scores for your SSE. Alright? So we're going to look at those. So just to remind us that when we're talking about school improvement, it is a continuous cycle. It's not a one-off episode. It is a matter of we plan for action, that is our strategic planning, which is what we're focusing on for this retreat. Then we look at our implementation strategies based on the targets and the goals that we have identified for our specific institutions. Of course, if we monitor and we implement, we must be assessing what is happening with the plan. So it can't be a matter, well, it ought not to be a matter where you do a school improvement plan, submit it, when did I hear? See, on the 31st of July? Yes. Floyd, that's when, and after the 31st of July, you look back at that, you don't look back at that SIP until next year when you're asked for the annual evaluation. That's not how it is intended to be. The SIP is a working document that you make adjustments to throughout the course of the school year. So every quarter, you should be doing your assessment. For each quarter, looking at where you are at in terms of your targets that you identified for that particular year, and making adjustments where necessary, of course with the approval of your education officer. We analyze and we have to reflect on our practice. And of course, once we get the outcome of all of this analysis and evaluation, we go back to our planning stage. So, let us look at what the school self-evaluation. Your school self-evaluation, if done properly, should help you to identify the priority areas for your school improvement plan. So, question 2 or 1B rather. And we're all familiar with the school self-evaluation instrument. Some time ago, RD Forbes all gave you the genesis of the school improvement planning process in the ministry. There was a time when we had a separate instrument for school self-evaluation. We used to do a SWOT analysis. But subsequent to that, we decided that we didn't want to burden our school. So we said, since you're required to do the MOE&I SSE instrument anyway, let us use that, because that is a very comprehensive instrument that can be used for the purposes. You will also recognize that you're only required to do the self-evaluation at the start of your 3-year cycle. Let me say that again. So you are not required to do your self-evaluation every year. You're only required to do it at the start of the 3-year cycle. And so, you should all be doing or have done your SSE because you're now all at the start of a new cycle. Right, Floyd? Okay. Now, question 1B on your MOE&I instrument asks this question. What are the things you most want to improve? Whatever your response to that is going to be, that is based on the analysis of your data, then those are the areas for focus for your school improvement plan. So if you take up your school improvement plan that you're working on currently and go back to your SSE and you recognize that you are not accounting for those areas of concern that you identified in your SSE, it means that you have to go back to the drawing board. Because that is the main reason for doing your school self-evaluation, to establish where you are currently and to help you to determine where you want to go, which will help you in your target setting and your goal setting. So when we look at the first criteria for the school self-evaluation is curriculum planning and support. Now we expect a comprehensive analysis of all curriculum offerings. You see that? Clearly outlined with the adaptations explained and justified. We recognize that there are some institutions that when it comes to curriculum offerings, for your grades 1 to 6 or 7 to 9, you can deliver the MSc as it is in its current form. However, there are other institutions that you have to do some modification, or the curriculum people like to call it adaptation to the curriculum based on the students. So like our secondary school principals, when you get these students who are performing way below the grade 7 level, the expectation is that you're going to be doing some curriculum modification and adaptation to meet the needs of these children where they're at. And so your SSE must speak to that. What have you done? Why did you decide to adapt, to modify the curriculum as indicated? You must be able to provide the data that speaks to the students' performance. What did they come to you with? What's the baseline in terms of their literacy level? What accounts for this change? That's important. Of course, you're going to highlight the strengths and weaknesses that your data indicated and the proposed plan of action. The beautiful thing about the SSE instrument, colleagues, is that it gives you prompts. Prompts that you can utilize to guide you. Unfortunately, we recognize that many times when you populate this template, you don't use the prompts. We don't want to make it hard for you. We have given you the instrument, we give you the prompts, and we also give you the criteria that we use to score your SSE. What does that tell you? We really want you to do well. We really want you to produce an SSE that is of good standard. And so your student assessment and performance. And you'll notice, colleagues, that the SSE instrument is aligned to the key performance indicators of the MOE&I. Everybody knows what MOE&I means. MOE&I is the entity currently within our education system that determines school effectiveness. Whether we agree with how it operates or not, currently that is the entity that determines school effectiveness. And so you'll find that your SSE helps you and guides you to determine where you're at when you look at the key performance indicators. Students' performance, students' attainment and students' progress, specifically in the areas of math and English, or literacy and numeracy, are critically weighted, are weighted heavily when the MOE&I looks at rating a school for effectiveness. So we want to keep that in mind. And we also guide you in terms of when you look at your SSE, which questions on the school self-evaluation you should be responding to those specific criteria. Then we move to teaching and learning. And these, we look at your questions 6 and 9 of your SSE. We are also mindful though, when the officer takes up your SSE, that you might have some analysis speaking to teaching and learning that would not be captured in questions 6 and 9. So we also look at your responses in other areas to determine whether or not the school self-evaluation has actually met the standard. Student support. The good thing about student support is that for every single cycle of the MOE&I, this is an area that we get very good ratings. And so you want to clap yourselves for that, because all our schools across all the regions seem to do very well when it comes to student support, whether it's your co-curricular programs, your guidance and counseling program. We do very well in that regard. And so we rarely have issues where that is concerned, because student support services, safety and security, majority of our schools basically have a good handle on that aspect of their school operations. Ethos is another area, another criteria in your self-evaluation, and it looks like the description and evaluation of all factors that contribute to your school ethos. Because you know, the environment that we create as leaders is critical to what happens, the impact it has on teaching and learning. So we have to be mindful of that. Questions 8 and 11 in your SSE will treat with that. The matter of your resources, how do you utilize your resources? And I must speak to that, because many times what the response we get to this question and the prompts in your SSE, it is a list, it is a shopping list or a wish list. Whilst we are asking you, how do you utilize the resources you currently have at your disposal? And so just be mindful of that. So even though you have already submitted your SSE, you might want to go back and do your checks to ensure that it has met the standards. And what I usually recommend to schools, the committee, once the committee has completed that SSE, just ask a group of persons on staff to review. Use the review criteria that is in your manual and score the SSE. Get somebody who is going to be very objective, or a group of persons that will be very objective. Leadership, policy making, question 10 speaks to that. Many times we're very good at talking about teaching and learning curriculum, but when it comes to actually evaluating ourselves as leaders, we are not as open and as honest. And so we also have to look, and when we talk about leadership, it's not just you as principal or and vice principals. What about the senior management team, your board of management? So when we talk about leadership and policy making, it is more than just the principal. So we have to look at the management performance. We have to analyze all of that. So those are the criteria for the school self-evaluation. But you have completed your school self-evaluation already, and you have met the standards, right? Right? You're not so sure? All right, well, you'll have a chance later to go back and look at it to ensure that it meets the standard. So, we're going to move to the school improvement plan. So like the SSE, your officers are required to score your school improvement plan and give you a rating. So you know whether or not your SIP meet the standards. One of our job functions in the standards development unit of the School Improvement Services branch, each year when we get the SIP review data from the regions, we flag the schools that, one, don't have SIPs, and two, the schools that don't meet their SIPs don't meet the standards for school improvement. And those are the schools that we target for additional support. So we work with your regional team to find you, Dr. Edgel and myself, secondary level without the requisite skills and competencies to access the secondary curriculum, and we have to fix that. So the expectation is that all your goals are going to be aligned to the ministry's strategic objectives. And of course, there are some guidelines in terms of how your goals should be written. And I'm sure when your officer had your QEC SIP training, they went through all of that with you. Are your targets related to the SSE? So, our SSE would have identified, and so we expect that the targets that your SIP are included in your SIP would have emanated from your SSE. If that is not the case, your officer is going to send you back to the drawing board. Now, be mindful, colleagues, that if it is the first step in terms of the SIP, having completed your SSE and got the approval to go to SIP, the SSE to go to SIP, is to get this right. If you don't get the table of alignment correct, it makes no sense. You transition to your operational plan because it means you have to go work twice. And we really don't want that to happen. And that is why, if you notice from the SIP planning cycle that was shared earlier by Mrs. Forbes, at each step of the process, you are communicating with your education officer, and your education officer is expected to give you feedback. Feedback could be, fix this part, there might be comments on your documents for you to address. Feedback could mean a one-on-one sit-down session with the SIP committee. It is based on what are the findings of the officers. Because we want to ensure, please, that before you even submit the final document, your SIP has met these criteria. It's very, very important. So we want to ensure that your targets are relevant and that the trend data that you presented in your SSE actually is aligned to those targets. Where applicable, are your targets responding to the MOE&I reports? So you know once you have been inspected, there are recommendations. And so we should see that. Now I know some schools were inspected over 10 years ago, and those recommendations might no longer be applicable to your specifics, the current school improvement plan. But your officer would know that, and so your officer will guide you in terms of how do you now circumvent this, because if you have met those standards, then we have nothing to worry about in that regard. But if you did not, and you have not treated with the recommendations, even if your MOE&I inspection was 10 years ago, your current SIP should reflect the recommendation. Sometimes it is a matter that partially over time we were able to treat with the recommendation. So whatever is still outstanding should be captured in your current SIP. Alright, so now the next set of criteria speaks to the operational plan. And you recognize this is a sample of the operational plan, which speaks to how we're going to actually meet the targets that we have set out. So the first thing are your activities and tasks aligned to the targets. Because we have wonderful targets, but our activities and tasks speak to the strategies that we're going to be utilizing to meet the targets. So if your activities and tasks are not aligned to the targets, then it means that there's going to be a problem when it comes to actually meeting the targets that you have set. So the activities must be appropriate and aligned to the respective tasks. Your time plan, the timelines, is it really practical, the timelines that you have set? Is it that the timelines that you have, all the timelines are for August 2026? Whilst there are activities that could be completed in a day, in a month, in the first term. So your activities should, the timeline should determine, your activities should determine the timelines that you establish. And we are looking at appropriate resources. Now, we know that the matter of resources many times, and I see Mr. Scott is here, and I just want to remind us that when we're completing our budget, you see that section at the back of the budget that speaks to the additional resources that you need, you are expected to complete it. So, when the end of the financial year comes and Sophia finds herself with some excess money and Cedric has some additional funds, that is what we use to determine who gets what. Now, mind you, not everybody is going to get everything they ask for. But look here, if you don't indicate, then who you're going to quarrel with? Can be us, right? So ensure that when you're completing your budget, your annual budget, that last page, Cedric, it says what? Additional resources required, whether it's human, material, financial resources. And ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, it actually works for some schools. A lot of schools have benefited from that. They indicated and provided the justification. So you're not just telling us what you want, as if it is a wish list, but you should provide the justification for sale. So when the region and Cedric have some excess funds, and we need to determine who gets what, we will have your school to look at in terms of additional resources. So, in identifying the resources for your school improvement plan, you must indicate what are the resources you're going to need, whether it's physical, financial, human, whatever kind of resources that's needed, and ensure that your resources are in keeping with what is practical and doable. Now, the tasks that you have in your operational plan, your tasks must speak to organizational, managerial, and other actions that are necessary to achieve your outcomes. Okay? So, remember, just keep in mind, colleagues, that your operational plan, your table of alignment sets up where you want to go. These are the targets you want to meet. The operational plan tells us how you intend to meet this. So you have to ensure that everything that is captured on your operational plan truly reflects the strategies that you intend to undertake to meet the targets and the outcomes that you really want. There must be a logical link between your indicators and your means of verification. Sometimes the indicators can be a little ticklish. I find them a little problematic when we review the SIP. And just to let you know, we all SIP, not just review data, but your actual SIPs come to us in our unit at the School Improvement Services branch. So be mindful of that. It doesn't just stop at your region with your officers. It comes to us. So for example, those schools that are so endowed that you utilize the resources of CCEP. You know, I heard Canute speaking about assisting schools with their SIP. But you know, we have seen instances where we have gotten the exact SIP from 3, 4, 5 schools. The only difference is the name. Yes. The only difference. And can I tell you, Dr. Edgen and I are the only person in the unit, but we read every one of them. Best believe, we go through every single SIP that is submitted from the 1,000, when we have approximately 95% compliance across the 7 regions. So, Matt's brain, you tell me how much is that of the 1,010 schools we have in Jamaica. But we go through every one of them. We also know the ones that you borrow the SIP from your friend because you sometimes forget. You change the name at the front, but sometimes in the inside, you forget to change the school name. So you see, when you're borrowing, just ensure that you do it good. Look here, we're laughing about it is a serious matter. Because no two schools have the same needs. And your SIP is unique to your institution. So you see that Mr. Good over there, last year on his SIP, he had a target for this fantabulous bus. But now he met the target. And so now, somebody else, like Mr. Weir over there, gets a little jealous and decides that this year, oh, Mr. Good bus bigger than mine, don't know what I. And so Mr. Weir might decide, I want a bigger bus this year. Even though I have a bus already. So, even though the schools are similar and you might have similar targets, your context differ. The context differ, and be mindful of that. And so we actually read your SIP, just so you know, we actually read them. So, your indicators must be clear, relevant, as specific as possible, adequate, and monitorable. You must be able to monitor it. And there must be a clear plan as to how you're going to monitor those targets that you have. And you have to collect the data, of course. Goals and indicators must also be linked, because remember, we can't meet the goals that we set out if all our targets and all the different components are not working in sync. Alright, we're coming down, so we get to the problem area. This is the most problematic area of the SIP. And this is not just for Region 6. This is right across the 7 regions, and specifically the primary schools. Now, you are budgeting for what you have. You can only budget. When you make your budget on a monthly basis, do you budget for what you don't have? You budget for what you don't have? Alright, you shouldn't. You shouldn't, because that's how you get yourself in problems. You should budget for what you are sure you have in hand. And even when you have some, because some of you have some good friends, your institutions have some good friends that help you with resources. That's okay, because you have a sense. So, in addition to your internal, your regular grants and so on, you know the partnerships that exist. So you know the budget that you have. So, and this is specifically for the primary school. Your budget for your SIP cannot be $10 million if you don't have a $10 million income. Now, if you have a $10 million income, that's fine. But just be mindful that you have to identify the source of your funding. And when Cedric comes, he's going to talk to you more about that, because he's the money man. So your budget, your financial plan, does the projection. Notice the financial plan is aligned to your alignment table. Your alignment table has targets for 3 years. I want you to get this very clear. Your operational plan only treats with the target for the current year. So each year you do an operational plan. So this year you submit a complete SIP. School profile, mission, vision, the whole works. Because you're at the start of your cycle. Clear so far? Now the operational plan within that SIP will speak only to the targets for school year 2025 to 2026. Clear? You sure? Alright. So no more. I know some people are accustomed to do 3 years operational plan. No. 1 year. So next year, as in 2026, 2027, when you would have completed your annual evaluation, then you are going to submit only a new operational plan. That sounds good, not true? So you don't need to submit a whole SIP again. So the first year, it's the complete SIP, but your operational plan is just for the first year. So it treats with the targets specific to year 1. For the ensuing 2 years, you are treating with the targets for those respective years. So be mindful of that. Now your financial plan does the projection for years 1, 2, and 3. So in your completed SIP, your financial plan will do the projection for years 2 and 3, even though you are going to be working in year 1. Is that clear? Yes. All right. So it has to be, your financial plan must be aligned to the approved annual budget. So when your officer takes your plan, the officer has to take the budget and look at the SIP and be able to find the line item in your budget that corresponds with what you have in your SIP to score this particular criteria. Very, very important. So there must be, so everything you have in this financial plan, you must be able to account for it in your annual budget. Okay? So too, it must speak to the allocation for the task, and we must see realistic allocation of funds. So you have to be mindful of that in doing your budget. The SIP, the implementation and monitoring plan, many times we don't get that in your SIP, but it is scored as a part of your SIP, and it's important because this is where you assign the task accordingly. Who are the persons responsible or accountable for the task that are identified in your operational plan? So it is critical that you complete the monitoring and implementation plan, because this is where you now assign the task and you know who to hold accountable. Remember earlier Dr. Thompson spoke about the accountability component, how critical it is for effective implementation of the SIP. Now, as school leaders, your responsibility is to manage the educational experiences within the institution with your team, of course, to transform schools that we can see continuous improvement, and it becomes a part of your mode of operation. So we see, sometimes you see continuous, you see some episodes or pockets of improvement, but what we want is sustained improvement. Consistently, we are seeing the improvement. Whether we are going for the incremental improvement, because in some instances that is what is required, or we're going for the total overall, which is the turnaround approach as was articulated earlier this morning. But what is important is it must become a part of how we operate, and everybody understands that. And then we're ready to go. Thank you. Questions? Are there any questions or clarification? Okay. Mr. Kelly, over to you.
Can we give Dr. Evans another round of applause, please? And I know she doesn't mind if you can give a clap like we're happy that it's also lunchtime. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Evans, as per usual, for sharing with the Region 16. I know the principals will have had a lot of engagement about SIP from Dr. Hedgel, from the officers, and the conversation has been happening, and I know it will definitely continue, and I figure that is why you have no questions at this point in time. So you have realized from your schedule that we are at lunchtime. We are at lunchtime. I figure most of us have been up before the sun started to shine, and we are at lunchtime. But one thing before we go to that, I want us to say, and I think it has been captured in all the sessions thus far. We believe that you should complete the SSC and submit it to us on the 30th of June. We believe you should complete the SIP and submit it to us the 31st of July for approval and implementation the 1st of September. But the reason for the SIP is not because we want a document. Because we want the schools to be better. It's because we want to see the children who enter through those gates and the staff, they're at a better place, they develop. And that is the reason why we want us, all of us, to have an SIP. Not just for submission, but for improvement. And I want that to resonate in the room. It's not just about doing a document for us or for yourself. It's about all of us working together as God's children to make everybody we have a responsibility for better. Can I invite you to stand, please? And I'm going to call on Dr. Burke, who likes to do this part, as we are going to go for lunch. Please be mindful that we were slated to end this session at 12:30. Madam Regional Director, do we still give the hour for lunch? Yes? No? Well, I have to defer to the Regional Director. But we're at the point where we're going to do grace, and I invite Dr. Burke to come up here. She's going to do it with the tune of the Happy One I would presume. I am not a singer. But you would have realized that we will return here at 1:30 for the next session that will be hosted in this room. But now for grace.
Thank you, Sir Kelly. After 3, 1, 2, 3. For health and strength and daily food, we praise thy name, O Lord. We praise thy name, we praise thy name, we praise thy name, O Lord. Amen. Please have a wonderful lunch.
Thank you, Dr. Burke. So just for some final instructions, we proceed to the dining area. God's